If you are taking one of the Cambridge or other writing tests to show your level of English, you're going to be asked to talk about not just what they call simple ideas, but what they refer to on those tests as complex ideas. It can be a little hard to tell the difference, but it will impact your grade to be using and analyzing and explaining complex ideas. So let's look in this video at what's meant by that and how to do it. All right, so welcome back to High Value Writing. I'm Erin, and today this is what we're going to look at here. What is really meant by an idea that's simple in this way? What's really meant by complex, and how can you ensure what you write about is complex? At the end, we'll have one quick trick when you're not sure what to write about, how to grab a topic from within what you're being asked and make that visit complex ideas, not simple. Let's get into it. So simple ideas are called simple typically because the reader or scorer might consider the ideas too broad, as if one idea applies to everything, right? As if there's one simple idea that can work in all these different situations, which is usually not true. So an idea could be considered simple if it's too broad, if it doesn't answer some of the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why. Maybe a broad statement won't even discuss which time era we're looking at or which applications we're looking at. And lastly, simple ideas may not consider competing factors. The idea here being, it's not so simple. There's more to consider. There are layers, there are competing factors, there are disagreements, agreements, etc. So these 3 examples, you can see from the color coding what's making them be considered simple. Since the dawn of time, I've read a lot of essays like that, by the way, from the very beginning. You know, it's not possible that something has been identically true from the very beginning for every single human, right? It would be too simple to think that one thing applied to everyone over all time, right? It's not complex enough. Since the dawn of time, humans have struggled to adapt to their environments. Which environments, right? This is where we could dig in with some 5 W's. Children, which ones, should learn art of what sort, in what ways? What if there's not a budget for it? Because it's good for their imaginations. Well, true, but let's get into that a little more. In what way will this be beneficial? And lastly, the best thing we can do. This is another kind of indicator that this might be a simple idea to make it sound like there's one quick fix. The best thing we can do for our health is eat fresh fruits and veggies. It's not untrue. It's just that it's not taking into account other factors, other considerations. So let's look at what we would do with these examples and some others to make sure we're looking at the complexity of the ideas. So a complex idea will be more specifically applied, whether that's a when, sort of in what situation, in what location, in what era, or a where, right? And we'll look at specific factors. So these examples actually are the same topics as on the previous screen, but you'll see that I'm trying to kind of cut into those topics now and figure out what could add complexity and not be overly broad and overly easy as a thought. So now, instead of saying that since the dawn of time we've struggled to adapt to our environment, I'm saying in the early 1700s, pioneers faced intense weather without today's technology. So I know now I get to write about technology, weather, a specific time period, which is less broad, more applied. Primary school students, that's one of my 5 W's. Who? Students, kids, kind of broad, right? Let's get a more specific who. Primary school students should get to draw and play music. What type of art, right? To develop their right side brains. In the last example, I had just said it was good for their imagination. Now I'm getting more specific. Lastly, when available, considering other factors, cost, location, accessibility, when available, adults can reduce the risk of certain diseases by eating fresh food. I'm not claiming that fruit is going to save us for everything that we might deal with, but I am saying that adults can be helped in some situations. So that's how we get a little more complex, a little more of a slice and an angle and a perspective. So let's look at how to really consider those 5 W's, because you can really dive into that who, what, when, where, why to help you move your simple ideas or concepts that you're going to describe into complexity. For example, studies show who? Students aged 3 through 10 benefit from music education, right? Maybe that's some kind of example I could add in. Children and adults, where? Living in countries with lower sunlight exposure should eat na. Using ChatGPT can help when, in what situations, with writing a first draft, but becomes less helpful when it comes to editing for tone. So what you can do if you're thinking about, oh shoot, I have an idea to discuss, but what if they're going to say that it's simple? Look at those 5 W's to see what you can do to expand and specify your idea. Here are some other ways to do that, and then we'll wrap up with a quick trick. So 5 ways to get complex, you can ask yourself these questions. Maybe you've created a statement that might be a little overly simple like mine here. Daily exercise is required for kids' optimal health. Probably true and helpful, but I'm making a very big statement here without a lot of detail or complexity. What I can do to expand that is ask myself these questions. When might this not be true? I've said it was required. Really? Every day? Do we know for sure? Who might disagree with this idea of optimal? Are there doctors with different views? Are there teachers with different views? Can I limit by time or place? What might be a competing argument? Yeah, it doesn't have to be every day or something like that. Or you can ask yourself a what if question. So in this example, and we'll look at one more after this, I've come up now with studies show kids who play outside 3 to 4 times a week build brain and muscle cells due to oxygenation. So they're getting more air in there. I've specified what type of health, how often, right, to make it a lot more complex in that way. So one more example, and then we'll get that trick and wrap up. The author argues you may be working on one of those examples where they ask you to read a text and respond to it, right? Here we want to make sure we do not represent the author's ideas as being too simple, but we look for the complexity in the author's idea. So instead of the author argues that the 2 economic systems cannot coexist, I'm thinking, what if? Which systems, right? Who might disagree with this whole idea? The author argues that in countries with socialist histories, capitalist changes may at first cause class strife. So we've made it more complex because we're not making these overly simple answers for things. So let's wrap up with a quick trick. You can continue asking yourself those questions, but when you're reading something and responding to what you've read, look in the reading for a topic that you know you can make complex. So in this example, in countries with higher gender equality in education, we tend to see reduced crime and hunger. In regions with lower gender equality in terms of schooling, we see the opposite. This is the quote that I'm working with. Well, I'm noticing something in there a couple of times, the concept of gender equality in education. I'm going to pull that out. I'm not going to say something simple like, we need more gender education in schools. It's good for people to go to school. We kind of know that, but I want to think through this now. What if? Okay, what if a country or city made this change? When, where, who? What age group are we talking about? What kind of schooling? Do we all get the same topics? Same, ideas that we get to learn about? What's working against this? What are the factors preventing this equal gender education, right? Is it something social, cultural, economic? That's getting into complexity right there. And what's working for this? Who are the teachers and educators and believers trying to put this forward? All 4 of those kinds of questions around the idea here are ways for you to broaden that topic and figure out what can make it complex. What are the complexities of that topic? All right, so please let me know what other questions you have. This video was made by request. Thank you so much. I love getting your requests. I hope this will help you with your Cambridge and other English tests. All right, talk soon. Have a great day.